There is an ancestral sequence capable of teaching the body to stop fearing its own healing, dissolving the fear that keeps trauma active even when everything suggests you could move forward. The issue is not a lack of effort or conscious resistance, but a silent somatic mechanism that interprets improvement as risk and responds by closing the chest, shortening the breath, and locking energy at the exact moment relief begins to approach. In the next few minutes, you will discover how to remove fear from its command role through direct body-based practices that re-educate the nervous system without going through mental narrative. There is something about this specific time that makes the body more able to release old defenses, a convergence between a collective cycle and a biological window that will be explained shortly, but that determines whether reorganization happens now or remains postponed for years to come. If you interrupt this video before completing the sequence, you will miss the precise moment when the body could learn that moving through healing no longer requires the vigilance it once needed, keeping active the same contraction that drains your vital energy and paralyzes creative movement. What sustains this pattern is about to be revealed. This automatic containment operates because fear still plays a structural role within trauma, keeping it organized and active in the body. While fear occupies this position of command, it does more than block progress. It fulfills a specific biological task, preserving a defensive pattern that was once necessary and was never given permission to dissolve. Trauma, in this sense, is not passive memory, but operational memory, sustained by an invisible pillar that must be removed, not destroyed. Egyptian alchemists understood that every true transmutation requires the inner furnace to recognize heat as reorganization, not as a threat of dissolution. In the temples of Thoth, healing was treated as an update of living matter, a process in which the body needed to feel enough safety to release the old form without collapsing into emptiness. When that safety was absent, the substance remained rigid, loyal to the known structure, even when it had become obsolete. What happens biologically is that the nervous system maintains defensive states as long as it does not recognize a safe field to transition through. The vagus nerve, responsible for modulating between protection and presence, continuously reads the internal and external environment, deciding in milliseconds whether the body can relax or needs to brace. When this reading detects subtle danger, even residual, the breath rises, the fascia contracts around vital organs, and spatial perception narrows into tunnel vision. This protocol was designed to save lives in real threats, but it remains active in symbolic threats the body has never learned to differentiate. The present moment carries something that makes this reorganization possible now. You are moving through a liminal period, a time of transition in which old patterns become visible and the nervous system gains enough plasticity to release defenses without collapsing. This window is not emotional, it is biological and collective, creating the conditions for the body to finally update its reading of danger and recognize that the present no longer demands the armor of the past. What you feel as diffuse heaviness or unexplained fatigue is the body hesitating at this threshold, waiting for a signal that crossing is safe. There is someone who arrived exactly at this point, noticed that every attempt at improvement triggered immediate retreat, and discovered how to remove fear from the role it was still performing. What this person lived through will show how the body learns, through direct experience, that healing can happen without danger. Tracy was 47 years old and worked as a dentist in a neighborhood clinic where she treated entire families, children who grew up in her chair, adults who kept coming back. Her routine was stable and predictable, but over the past 2 years, something had shifted internally. She could sense she was on the verge of making important decisions, expanding the clinic, hiring another professional, reducing her own workload. But every time she moved closer to these steps, her body reacted with immediate containment. Her chest closed first, as if someone were tightening an invisible band around her ribs. Her breathing rose and became shallow, trapped between her throat and her sternum. Her solar plexus hardened as a single block, preventing any sense of lightness or expansion. Tracy recognized these signals because they were followed by sudden withdrawal, as if moving forward were too risky and pulling back were the only sensible option. She would begin planning concrete changes and, days later, simply stop without a clear reason, only with the impression that something was wrong, that the timing was not right. She tried cognitive therapy for 8 months, worked on limiting beliefs, identified patterns of self-sabotage, but none of it touched the root of the containment. She tried restorative yoga 3 times a week, but the thoracic rigidity returned just a few hours after each class. She experimented with guided breathing techniques, meditation apps, supplements for anxiety. Yet the body kept reacting the same way whenever the possibility of expansion came close. The issue was not in the mind. It was written into the tissue. It was on Christmas Eve, while she was preparing the house to receive her family, that Tracy found an old box in the living room closet. Inside, there was a notebook from her maternal grandmother, filled with notes about body-based practices she used during moments of transition. One passage stood out. It described teaching the body to recognize safety through visual orientation. Rhythmic breathing and touch over the center of the chest, presented as signals the internal system understands without words. In the margin, her grandmother had written, "For when the body forgets that it can rest." Tracy began applying it that very night, alone in her bedroom after everyone had gone to sleep. She softened her gaze and widened it gently, without focusing on anything specific. She took 2 quick, deep breaths through her nose, followed by a long exhale through her mouth, and placed her right hand over her sternum while keeping her left hand on her upper abdomen. In the first 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then she felt warmth rising under her palms, a subtle micro-tremor moving through her chest, and her breathing dropped on its own without effort, down into the lower abdomen. What unfolded over the following days began to show that something in her internal reading of danger was being updated. But before you learn what truly changed in Tracy's life, you need to experience in your own body what she began to feel in that moment. What you are about to do is re-educate how your nervous system reads the present, removing fear from the function it still occupies. This sequence begins with broad orientation, an adjustment in spatial perception that shifts the body out of the tunnel vision typical of defensive states. When the gaze narrows, the nervous system interprets it as a signal of imminent threat and keeps containment active. Expanding peripheral vision without moving the head tells the body that the surrounding space is safe, allowing excessive vigilance to soften. Sit comfortably, spine upright but without rigidity, feet resting on the floor. Let your gaze settle on a point in front of you, without focusing on it intensely. Keeping your eyes still, begin to widen your lateral awareness, as if you could notice movement at the edges of your visual field without turning your head. Sense the space to the left and to the right at the same time, without effort, simply allowing vision to expand gently. Stay here for 30 seconds, breathing naturally, while noticing what happens in your body. You may begin to notice your breath dropping on its own, without command. The chest may soften slightly, the jaw may loosen, the shoulders may release weight you did not realize you were holding. This is the sign that the vagus nerve is shifting from a defensive mode into a receptive one. If your vision starts to narrow again, gently return to openness without forcing it. The body is learning that it can perceive the entire space without needing to brace against it. Keeping your vision wide, introduce vagal breathing through the physiological sigh, a breathing pattern that directly reduces autonomic load. Inhale deeply through your nose, then take a second short inhale, filling the lungs completely. Exhale slowly and fully through your mouth, emptying all the air. Repeat this 3 times, feeling the air enter in 2 quick waves and leave in a single, slow, continuous stream. Pay attention to what happens in the diaphragm, the solar plexus, and the base of the throat. With each cycle, you may notice warmth spreading through the chest, a sense of inner space widening, or even spontaneous yawns emerging. These are signs that the nervous system is releasing accumulated tension and allowing the breath to return to its natural resting pattern. If you feel lightheaded, reduce the depth of the inhales while keeping the rhythm steady. What matters is not intensity, but continuity of the pattern. Continue for 2 more minutes, alternating between maintaining wide peripheral vision and practicing the physiological sigh at regular intervals. Notice whether the weight in your body shifts, whether temperature changes, whether any area that was rigid begins to soften. Do not force anything, simply observe. The body is receiving new information about the present moment, updating the danger reading that had kept the defensive pattern active. Before moving on to the next stage, there is something essential you need to know about what happened to Tracy after that Christmas Eve, because what she discovered in the days that followed will show exactly what is beginning to reorganize in you right now. Tracy practiced the sequence every morning for the 2 weeks following Christmas. On the 3rd day, she noticed she was able to complete the hiring plan without stopping halfway, something she had been postponing for months. On the 5th day, she had a difficult conversation with her clinic partner about redistributing responsibilities and was able to stay present throughout the entire exchange without her chest closing. The chronic fascial rigidity she carried between her shoulder blades gradually eased, and she realized she was waking up without the familiar heaviness in her chest that had followed her for years. What truly changed was her ability to sustain decisions without retreating days later. Tracy hired the new professional, reduced her own workload by 20%, and began planning a trip she had been postponing for as long as she could remember. Through repetition of the sequence, the body had learned that moving forward no longer required the vigilance it once did. Fear still appeared at specific moments, but it no longer occupied the command position that organized her entire defensive response. She could feel the difference in her body. Her breath dropped naturally, the solar plexus remained soft even in uncertainty, and the sensation of standing at the threshold between ending something old and beginning something new no longer caused paralysis. What Tracy discovered on that Christmas Eve, when her body began to recognize that this time of closure and renewal allows for deep reorganization, is what you are experiencing as you practice. Just as certain periods carry the symbolism of releasing the old to receive the new, the nervous system also recognizes specific windows in which defenses that no longer serve can be undone. You are moving through this threshold, updating your internal reading of danger and allowing the present to be lived without the armor of the past. Complete the sequence with the gesture of safety, a tactile anchoring that signals to the body that expansion does not equal exposure. Place your right hand over the center of the sternum, fingers pointing upward, and your left hand over the upper abdomen, just below the sternum, fingers pointing downward. Maintain gentle pressure, firm but not heavy, as if you were offering protective containment, not defense. Breathe naturally and notice the warmth beginning to form beneath your palms. With each exhale, slightly increase the pressure, as if gently pressing inward, and with each inhale, soften the pressure, allowing the chest to expand freely. This rhythm creates a direct dialogue with the nervous system, informing it that containment is available when needed, and that expansion is also allowed. Continue for 90 seconds, observing whether the pulse beneath your hands becomes more noticeable, whether temperature shifts, whether any subtle emotion begins to move. You may notice microtremors in the chest, spontaneous sighs, or a sense of weight moving down from the chest into the abdomen and legs. These are signs that the body is releasing chronic containment and allowing energy to circulate without obstruction. If tears come, let them. If yawns arise, allow them. The body is completing defensive cycles that were left suspended and releasing charge that no longer needs to be held. Integrate everything: wide peripheral vision, the physiological sigh at a slow rhythm, and the hands maintaining rhythmic touch over the sternum and upper abdomen. This combination creates a complete safety signaling circuit, informing the nervous system through 3 simultaneous channels that the present is safe, that containment is available when needed, and that the body can finally release the defense that kept trauma operational. Stay here for 2 more minutes, simply noticing, without seeking any specific result, allowing reorganization to happen. The core practice is complete, and what follows seals this transformation in the body. The sign that reorganization has occurred is a breath that naturally drops into the lower abdomen without conscious effort. If you notice the air moving in and out with full amplitude, reaching areas that were previously restricted, the nervous system has updated its reading of safety and removed fear from its command role. This marker is not subtle. It is tangible and can be verified at any time by placing a hand on the abdomen and noticing whether it expands on the inhale without resistance. To anchor this new state, use the integration touch whenever you need to reaffirm internal safety. Place your right hand over the sternum, apply gentle pressure for 3 slow, full breaths, then release. This gesture takes between 30 and 40 seconds, can be done discreetly in any environment, and functions as a somatic reminder that the body recognizes the present as safe. Repeat whenever you feel the need to reconnect with the state reached in this practice. When you feel your chest beginning to close at the moment something good approaches, pause where you are. Gently widen your peripheral vision without moving your head. Take a full physiological sigh. Place your hand over the sternum and repeat internally. Fear does not need to command. This protocol interrupts the automatic containment response and returns to the body the capacity to choose presence over defense. Use it as many times as needed over the coming days and weeks, especially during moments of transition or important decisions. The sequence is sealed. The body carries the reorganization it has lived through, and what comes next expands the field of understanding around what you are sustaining from this point forward. The body that once reacted with containment as healing approached now recognizes something different. The breath drops without effort, the chest remains open even in uncertainty, and the vigilance that consumed vital energy is no longer required. You did not simply move through a practice, you crossed a threshold where the nervous system updated its reading of danger and allowed the present to be lived without the armor of the past. This reorganization is not temporary. It is structural, and it is sustained as long as you repeat the safety signals the body has learned to recognize. The sequence you experienced here is part of a broader path of somatic release and vagal reorganization. There are other layers of defense installed in specific regions of the body, other knots that still keep old patterns active, and other ancestral practices capable of reaching memories that neither therapy nor conventional meditation can access. What you experienced is an entry point, not the full journey, and each practice reveals a different portal within the nervous system. Peter Levine wrote, "Trauma is not in the event itself. It lives in the nervous system that did not complete its response. What you just did was complete a defensive cycle that had remained suspended, removing fear from the position where it was holding the pattern together. The transformation did not happen because you forced your way through, but because the body finally received permission to release what it had been preserving for far too long." Just as Tracy discovered on Christmas Eve that certain periods carry the possibility of closing the old and integrating the new. You are moving through this time of healing by recognizing that the body no longer needs to sustain defenses that have already fulfilled their role. The same intelligence that created the body also inscribed within it every path of return. And when perception, breath, and conscious touch are aligned, that intelligence can operate without obstruction. If this practice reorganized something in your nervous system, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that integrates neuroscience, ancestral wisdom, and somatic practices at this depth. Share this video with someone you recognize as getting stuck right when they could move forward. Consider becoming a channel member. Your support sustains the continuity of this work and allows more people to access knowledge that dissolves trauma at the root. Write in the comments, "I move through this season of healing, and fear no longer commands me." This statement anchors the reorganization that just occurred, in both body and awareness, stabilizing the new response pattern you have established. To continue this journey of somatic release and discover other defenses that may still be blocking your creative force, click on the video appearing on the screen. When the body learns that healing is not danger, trauma loses the only foundation that was still sustaining it, and life stops repeating itself and begins to become conscious creation.